May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. One of the hidden graces of this stay-at-home Lent is our virtual windows, the gift of being able to look out through them. And you know what I mean by that. I mean our laptop screens, our tablet screens, whatever it is, maybe even our iPhones, our Androids, but the way we see out through them, through the world. And we connect with other people, staying together while we're all staying home. Jerry and I have spent time with our grown children who are sheltering in place in New York and D.C. Hank's in D.C., if anybody wondered. And with dear friends and family all over the country. Lent is meant to be a time of self-reflection, introspection, self-examination that's set apart from the rest of the year. But this Lent has been more set apart than any in my lifetime. What are your memories of Lent? This Lent has been more of a liminal state, separated from our regular lives by our routines, separated from our work life, from our school life, from our projects, from our social lives, our regular experiences that we expect, the rhythms. We really have stepped out of those rhythms. Our Lenten lockdown has been a paradox of tight restrictions and absolutely boundless freedom. We stay inside our homes, maybe even inside our rooms for most of every day. But through our virtual windows, these internet communication devices, we wander and connect freely. It's like Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are. I read that to the EDS kids last week as a kind of it is a gospel message. We'll talk about that maybe another day. But what I remember about that and what I think about now on our screens in this Lent, unbounded by time or place, we sail off through night and day and in and out of weeks and over years, as Wild Thing did, Max, interacting with friends next door, across town, across the country, and even in time zones half a world away. We connect more regularly and more deeply with dear friends and family members, and we reconnect with old friends from decades ago and far away, almost without any sense of distance in time or space. Another grace of our virtual connections during our stay-at-home order is that we can worship with friends at other churches, even on the other side of the world. We're all together now, but we're also recorded, so you can participate here and comment, say amen, greet your neighbors, do all that, and then you can watch later. You can hear Presiding Bishop Curry's sermon at the National Cathedral and hear probably what is the largest virtual choir that has ever been put together, singing "The strife is o'er, the battle is done." Yesterday afternoon, I attended Easter Vigil at St. George's Cathedral in Jerusalem. It was 8 o'clock in the evening there. They're 7 hours ahead of us. And through my iPad screen, I looked across 7,000 miles and 7 different time zones into the dark courtyard as the dean kindled the Paschal fire. From my study upstairs here in the broad daylight of Newport, I was so very ready for Easter that I could almost smell the smoke of the fire. I peered through the shadows on my screen, waiting for the sparks and then the flames that would light the Paschal candle and recall the story of our faith. Emmanuel has held Easter Vigil in the past, although maybe not for a while. Vigil starts with the Paschal fire, which is kindled outside the church. The Paschal candle is lit from the fire and processed around while the cantor sings the Exultet, which is basically a love song to the holy light that calls us out of darkness, that brings us hope. And maybe the unbelievably authentic Lent we've had this year can give us a new understanding of the chaos and disruption and disorientation that the disciples and the Marys, Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, what they felt during this last Holy Week and how they approached the tomb on Easter morning. And maybe we're more ready this year to hear good news and to hear about the empty tomb in a way that's, more personal and real to us. Think of the events that we've read and prayed about for the past week. Jesus riding down the Mount of Olives on Mama Donkey, while the Roman governor marches in from the coast with an army of soldiers. Jesus washing his disciples' feet on Maundy Thursday after he has blessed, broken, and shared the bread and told his disciples to keep that up after he's gone. Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane in utter anguish, knowing that he must go forward to his death, and yet feeling the fear inherent in his humanity. Jesus being tried, mocked, tortured, imprisoned, sentenced to death, dragging his cross through the ancient streets of Jerusalem to Golgotha. Jesus dying on the cross, while the disciples fled and the Marys watched and wept. Jesus being anointed by the Marys and laid in Joseph of Arimathea's rock-cut tomb. From this new perspective of lockdown Lent, separated from our usual schedules of work and school and family, friends, sports, projects, we can see how incredibly disorienting this time must have been for all those around Jesus. Nothing was like it always had been. None of the plans were on schedule or looked like they would even happen at all. Their story wasn't just unfolding as they thought it would. It's not happening. And just when it started looking bad, things got even worse. In our gospel reading today, it's a Sunday. For Jews, Jesus, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, it was the first work day of the week. Their world has just been turned upside down in a strange confrontation between a Roman occupying power and the local leaders. Those local leaders who were only allowed to have authority over things that didn't really matter to the Roman Empire. And in all of that chaos, Jesus is crucified. Mother Mary has lost her son, Mary Magdalene has lost her beloved friend, and the disciples have lost their political, moral, spiritual, religious leader, all to a violent and unjust death at the hands of government. Everything was uncertain. Who would lead them? Who would teach them? Who would break the hold of the occupying Roman power on their lives? Who might be next to die? They were unsettled, disoriented, terrified, and likely depressed. It's in that state of unreality, out of time, off schedule, not knowing what will happen next, that Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene go to the tomb. They feel a great earthquake as an angel of the Lord descending from heaven rolled back the stone in front of Jesus' rock-cut tomb. Now, rock-cut tombs, if you'll let me walk a little bit in Jerusalem here. Rock-cut tombs were very labor-intensive, so they were expensive. They were a luxury of a rich man in the Holy Land in Jesus' time. And there are several remaining in the rock quarry that is now embraced by and enclosed by Holy Sepulchre, the Emperor Constantine's great church in Jerusalem. My surprise when I saw a rock-cut tomb for the first time is that it didn't look like the pictures of Jesus' grave that I had grown up with and learned about in Sunday school. I had always seen an angel sitting like on a big boulder. But that's just not how they look. The door to a rock-cut tomb is actually a big disc, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 feet wide and about a foot thick, laboriously cut and hewn from the rock. And that disc is so heavy, if you can imagine a rock that thick and big, that when it rolls on its side to cover the front of the tomb, it really takes at least 2 strong men to do that. It would, after the Marys felt the earthquake, they see this angel sitting on top of that disc. And he appeared suddenly like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. Just in case later readers, like us, might question whether the Marys were imagining things in their grief and fear, Matthew's gospel gives them at least 2, and probably more, big, strong, reliable male witnesses. For fear of the angel, Matthew's gospel tells us, the guards shook and became like dead men. Nothing at all was going as people expected. The angel tells the Marys not to be afraid, that Jesus isn't in the tomb, and gives them the plan. Get all the guys, the angel says, and tell them that Jesus was raised from the dead, and get yourselves up to Galilee quickly. Jesus will meet you there, the angel tells them. As they leave the tomb, scared out of their wits and overjoyed at the same time, they meet Jesus, and he speaks to them, repeating the angel's instructions about going to Galilee. After the disorientation, fear, and grief of Lent under lockdown and COVID, I can really relate to the disciples and Mary's fear, confusion, their need for light to shine into the darkness. Maybe I am coming from Good Friday and Holy Saturday, from the dark space by the rock-cut tomb. My father died this last Tuesday of Holy Week and was buried on Good Friday. So maybe I have walked more closely with Mary's this Holy Week because of the timing of my personal experience. But maybe all of us share a different perspective this year. Give me a moment, I am fine. Because of our dislocation in time, schedule, and expectation, our plans have changed. Our story is not turning out like we thought it would. Many schools will reopen for the school year next year. Graduations have been postponed, weddings have been rescheduled. We are disoriented, possibly scared, and we just don't know what to expect. And we ache, just ache, for the hope and light of Easter. And just like that, it's here. It may be a while before we're out of our houses and don't have to keep physical distance. But Jesus is risen and walking among us, even and especially in these disorienting times. The graces of community and caring for one another bring new life and affirm God's presence. And even though it may be a while yet before we're out of our houses and back to our regular schedules and lives, there are things we can see and know about the resurrection right here, right now. You may have noticed the low motor sound as we worshiped here in our dining room over Palm Sunday, Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and now Easter. That holy hum is the incubator from Casey Farm. We're hatching chicks in about 16 days, and I am the mother hen during our time of EDS Online. And we're sprouting seeds for the garden. Inside in sunny windows, the children show me every morning during morning meeting how their seeds have sprouted, how their beans, how their flowers, how their tomatoes are coming up, ready to be planted as soon as the weather warms. Even though it's Easter, sometimes it just takes a little longer to see the change. Jesus tells the Marys to send the disciples up to the Galilee to see what will happen next. And we will wait a little longer for the eggs to hatch, for the seeds to sprout. But Easter has come. Amen.